Okay, good evening, everyone. Sorry, can anybody hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So we're starting now, and as you know,
Okay.
our tutor for today is Yusuf Adebayo Adebisi, who is a let me say, yeah, prolific researcher in Africa, and he's someone I actually look up to. So I'm sure we are going to enjoy this class. So okay. Good evening, Yusuf. Are you there?
Yes, I'm with you. Can you please make me the host so I can share my slide?
Okay. I will now. Okay.
All right. Thank you.
Okay, try sharing your screen now.
Okay. This, can you see my slide?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. I'm super excited to be with you virtually this evening. So I think this is very important as a young researcher to understand research ethics. What are the ethics in research, and how can you as a researcher actually avoid any practices that's illegal, and how you can actually submit your work or the proposed research for ethical review. So it's important that we as a young researcher, we understand this principle, and alongside other capacity that we are building when it comes to research. So my name is Yusuf Adebayo Adebisi. I'm the Director for Research and Thought Leadership at Global Health Focus. And I'm currently also a Director for Research at the African Young Leaders for Global Health. So I'll be talking to you about what research ethics is all about and what you can do as a young researcher to avoid any practices that is not allowed when it comes to research. I'm sure you are going to have a wonderful time learning more about ethics in research. So these are the stuff we're going to discuss. So research ethics involves the application of fundamental ethical principles of planning, conducting, and publishing of research. So ethical principle, I've said more about that, is that you don't just do research. When you are using participants, there are some things that you need to factor in when you are choosing people that will participate in your research, and how you should make sure that you don't expose anybody to risk. So research ethics actually comes from you planning when you are thinking of the research to the level of you publishing it. So it's a process and it's something that we all need to know. But one thing that is critical when you're talking about research ethics is that is ethical principles. I know all fields, medicine, many professions around the world actually has their own guiding principle. Same thing with research. So what are the guiding principles? Autonomy and respect. When you are doing a research, one thing that is very important is that your participants, you have to respect them. And you have to understand that if they say they are not participating in your research, there's nothing you can do. You can't force anybody to get involved in any research. So it's one of the principles and ethics that we need to know as a young researcher, that you don't force people to become your participants in your study. You can only tell them the benefit of the research. So you have to respect them and you have to give them that free will. The autonomy should be there for them to participate in your research or not. For instance, what actually brings about this principle of research ethics and why we have to follow ethics when it comes to research? A long time ago, when researchers actually want to conduct studies, they don't respect people. They can just pick anyone on the street and just cut their liver, or pick their hand and just cut it for research purpose. No respect for anybody. Nobody's guiding any ethics. Nobody's following any ethics when it comes to research. So they just do things at free will. They force people to do research. And that actually led to a lot of problems in the past. So when you read about the history of research ethics, you're going to see more of the bad practices that actually happened in the past. So it's very important that we understand this, that research ethics is not just there for being there. It also has its own benefit to the researcher and to the participant in your study. So the first principle is that there should be respect and there should be an autonomy. It's not that just put people into research and they are not interested in your research. They must be willing to do the research and they must give their full consent. So beneficence. This is also very important, that your research actually connotes kindness, not that you are posing a very significant risk to someone without their consent. So your research must be in the form of kindness, must contain kindness. Kindness, it says that you don't just do things to anyone, then you just pick someone and just cut their take part of their hair. So you don't do that. So when it comes to research, it's very important that you understand that one of the greatest reasons that kindness must be there to beneficence. So non-maleficence, you must not be able to cause harm to anybody. When you are doing studies and to the extent that you are causing harm to people and they are not giving consent. So your research must not be something that is too dangerous. And the fact is that even if it's something that you have to do a lot of things, for example, dangerous, you must get consent for people to do. There's a particular debate one time ago that is an interesting study that our medical students are ready to donate their kidney or to give out their organs when they died. And that study is very, very interesting in the sense that many people are saying no. And for researchers, it's one of the issues that we have when it comes to testing drugs on human, that we don't have to actually use people at times, that you have to go to rats using animals. But then you know that the way animals and humans actually react to some drugs is actually different. That's one of the things that is impeding some research to today. But then it's fine, because nobody wants to go into the risk of maybe you removing their liver or you cutting part of their body to do research. So you have to understand that all these are part of ethics when it comes to research. You don't just pick people and do anything to them. So justice. Research principle actually stands on the a solid rock of justice. It's about justice, free from exploitation. So it's very important that you also understand this, and scientific validity. So another thing about the guiding principle of research is that scientific validity. That means that somebody must have assessed your. That's why you have to submit research proposal to the ethics board for you to conduct any research. They must have looked at your study, the participant that you are using. Is it enough for you to make any meaningful deduction for your study? The proposed methodology is not going to cause any harm. Is it going to be useful? Does it have relevance? So, and the last principle is honesty. You don't lie. If you know that this research is going to cause harm to anyone, you have to tell them that, okay, this is actually going to happen. Are you still giving your consent to participate in the study? So you have to be honest. It's very important that you know this as a young researcher. So in this, to make it interactive and to make it more interesting, I'll be using case studies to guide our discussion. I think that will make it more practical, then we can understand what research ethics is all about. And the last part of this discussion, we'll talk about how you can submit your research proposal for ethics approval by the IRB. So group one, that's the first case that I'm going to share. Two graduate students have made some measurements on a new material. The data points are as shown. To prove their hypothesis, the results should lie on the curve shown. The two students considered omitting two data points, which were off the theoretical curve. The student has already conducted the research and what they expect. So in research, you don't expect anything. You don't just say, this is what will happen. You don't start predicting what will happen, but you do the research. Ethics can change in the research. So what they want or what they desire is that these two outliers to actually stay maybe above towards the y-axis or to stay on the line. But they are finding out that, okay, this thing is actually falling out of the measurement of what we are expecting theoretically. Then they are thinking of what? Removing those outliers or maybe adjusting the data so that it will favor them. You don't do that in research. Please understand this case, that you don't falsify data for the fact that you want it to suit what you want. You don't do that in research. It's fraud, research fraud. So that you say, okay, you get it right. No, you don't do that. Anything you find out in research and you are sure that this is your findings, report it. There's no need to tamper with any data. So this is wrong. So unethical, as it would amount to falsification of the, yes, that's what we have, because you are trying to shift the point. And that means that you're going to change the value for you to be able to make any deduction in your work. So should include outliers and give probable reason. Yes, you can justify why you actually see that in your study. Maybe the laboratory condition, maybe the research condition. It's possible that maybe when you are doing the study, there's moisture, or you have some issue with the environment, or because of the use of maybe data collector actually tamper with what you should have. So you just have to explain it. You don't need to falsify your data. You don't need to do anything that is more or less like fraud, so that you can justify what you have in mind. Remember, research is unpredictable. You can't predict what will happen. Though you can have suggestion of possibility that can happen, but it's until you see the data and you analyze it that you know the true thing that's actually happening. You can't speak for people. So research, that's why you're doing the research, to find out something new, to create knowledge, to impart knowledge. Not that you've already formulated your own data somewhere and you're trying to do your own stuff. No. So don't falsify data. Just look for a way to explain the reason why you have that outlier. Give the possible justification. Or at times, you can be silent about it. And then you'll be doing some questionnaire-based study, and you notice that, this interpretation doesn't make any sense. You can leave it like that. Don't talk about it. Talk about something that is important. But don't falsify it. You can be quiet about it by not talking more about that outlier or any result that you have. If it's not so important, you can keep quiet about it. But report it like that. So anybody reading your paper in the future know that this is what you find out, and can, in a way, reason out some things that, okay, maybe this is why you actually have this thing. But you yourself as a researcher are now changing your data. Changing the data because you want it to suit what you have in mind. No, that is wrong. You don't do that as a researcher. So another case, if it's just physical, I want us to actually do it together, but then I will read it out and explain where the problem is. So a group of medical students conducted a research on the awareness of diabetic diet in a medical clinic participants. Their research was recognized as the best undergraduate research, and later they submitted the same research paper to 2 different journals to see which journal publishes first. Don't do this. It's one of the research ethics that you don't submit your research paper to 2 journals at the same time. You don't do that. So it's very important that you all know this, that you are, even if it takes, I've submitted some paper since December last year. I've not even heard anything from the journal. Though I've done the first review, I'm still waiting for the second review. So we have a lot of, and that's what you should do as a researcher, is you have to be consistent and you have to be patient. You don't rush. Where are you rushing to? Unless if you want to get the paper out and you send the email to the editor, withdraw your paper and submit it to another journal. But now submitting your paper to 2 journals is wrong, the wrong practice, and you should not do that. So as a researcher, you don't submit one paper to 2 journals. Please know this. You have to wait, or you have to withdraw your paper from one journal before you can submit it to the other. So why? Unethical, as it will result in inadvertent double counting and inappropriate weighing of the result of a single study, which distorts the available evidence. What this means is that if you submit your paper to 2 journals, let's say for instance, the 2 journals actually accepted the paper and it is published online, that means that you'll be giving false insights. Because when some people are doing some study, maybe review, they find out that this paper, though they have different topics, but then this person actually submitted to different journal, that is giving a false look to what we actually have in the literature. So some researcher can actually cite the newspaper and it can be confusing at times. So it's very important that you know this. Another thing is that we are wasting resources on the peer review and publication process, in the sense that you are actually wasting people's effort. Two people are reviewing your paper at the same time and from those two different journals. So the first thing you can do is to withdraw your paper from that journal that you think is very slow and move it to a journal that you think is very fast by sending emails to the editor. So you should submit to one journal and wait for the other to respond before you can actually do anything on your paper. So another case, students are required to prepare a research proposal during their undergraduate program. Nima developed the idea for his project and discussed it with a friend. Several months later, he found out that his idea has been submitted as a research proposal by his friend without his knowledge. You are fond of stealing people's idea without carrying them along or what you want to do with the idea. It's not good. You are violating research ethics. And in a way that you are copying someone's idea without you giving them due acknowledgement. So you have to discuss with the person. So far, the person is the one that actually discussed the idea with you first. Talk with the person. Can we work on this together? If the person say no, I'm not interested, then when you publish the paper, you can acknowledge the person. But then you going behind them to use the idea to publish your own work you are violating research ethics. I know so many people don't know this. You just see someone's idea somewhere, you copied it, and you went to go and publish it. No, you should not do that. So far, that person discuss the idea with you. That person has the right to know that you actually want to do anything on that idea, because you're not the original, you're not the one that conceptualized the idea. You are not the owner of the idea. So discuss with the original, the owner of the idea, and you can move forward from there. So it's one of the bad values that we see around, but then it's not good. As a researcher, you have to understand this. It's part of what you should know as a building capacity in research. So why? Justification of what the case I just explained. Unethical as failure to give credit to the person whose idea it is amounts to what? Plagiarism. That means you are plagiarizing that person's idea. So is that you include that, discuss with the person and keep the person, that person as co-author. So far that person is ready to work on the paper. But then if that person is not ready to work on the paper, you can go ahead and acknowledge the person in your paper. So please understand this, because it's that person is intellectual and if that person discuss that idea with you first. So it's very important that we have to be very careful when we are doing some of these things when it comes to research. So 4 friends decided to work together on a research project during the vacation. One of them went abroad during the vacation and did not contribute to the research. The friends include all 4 names in a presentation made at a scientific congress. I know many of you guys actually do this a lot, including people in the research without doing anything like at all. At all. Not contribute to data collection, nothing. Just to add in my friend, add it to the paper. Is a bad practice, and it violates the principle of health and ethics when it comes to research. You have to know this, that if someone don't contribute at all or significantly to a paper, they don't have the right part of the co-author. So it's very important that you know this, that you don't also give people authorship. They must at least review the paper, read through the paper, and make some intellectual contribution to the paper. It's very important. Selection unethical, as only those who contributed intellectually should be cited as authors. Those who contribute in other ways may be acknowledged. Maybe they don't really give all their heart to the paper, you can acknowledge them in your paper. But people that should be added as co-author, according to research ethics, are people that contributed significantly to the work, maybe through reviewing, conceptualizing, data collection at times. Yes, as a data collector, you should have the right to be a co-author. If you contribute to maybe the writing of the paper as well, you have the right to be the co-author in the paper. So it's very important that we also know that. But I know many people do this at times, where the data collectors will not be included as part of the author. It's good if that's your agreement. And there's another thing that you have to document. Our agreement is just to help in data collection. It's fine. So, and you pay them as the research assistant. It's fine. But then, for instance, you don't pay them, you don't have any prior agreement, and they collect the data, and they also help you in writing the manuscript. Then they have the right to be part of the author. So you have to know this as even data collector. I saw a debate on Lancet that during the pandemic, people that actually risk their life to collect data are not added as co-author in some research paper. It violates the research ethics because this is the middle of the pandemic. These people contributed to data collection and they also help you in writing the manuscript. And you don't have them as part of the author. It's wrong. So if someone contributed significantly to the work and write and let me say the intellectual contribution, not just you guys collecting data and that's all. No, you must contribute to the paper intellectually. Then you have the right to be an author. So another case study, a group of undergraduate students planned a research project on the detection of filter abnormality in second trimester. By ultrasound scanning, they collected the data from the scan room without informing the mothers. This is wrong. Even though this will not cause any harm to the mother, but you don't inform the mother before you actually do anything. You don't inform the mothers that you are using something that has to do with them. In your study, you are violating their right. You don't do this. I know many people are eager to write case study, you want to publish in a journal. You have to take permission, even if it's case study, that you're not disclosing it, you have to take permission from the person that actually experienced that case. So it's very important that you know this, that you don't do things anyhow. Because you know that you don't know that you collect the data and you are using it to write papers and you're publishing it, you have violated research ethics. So unethical, as informed consent was not taken. You don't talk to the mother that, okay, I want to use, no, you shouldn't do that. You should have informed mothers of their intent, even though there's no particular advantage or disadvantage to the mother in doing so. Yes, it's not causing any harm to them and they're not benefiting anything. It's for you that you want to publish it and advance science. But advancing science doesn't come at the risk of you violating human rights or being doing something that we can call injustice, because it's injustice. In the case that you don't carry them along and you're using the data, something that is particular or that is peculiar to them in your work. So as a researcher, you don't do that. A group of undergraduate students collected data from a group of bank officers with their consent. This one, they take consent to regarding their working hours and salary with regards to the prevalence of high blood pressure. Subsequently, the researchers gave the same data to another group who were in need of same data variables. You don't do this. They gave you informed consent just for your study, not for you to share their data with another group that is working on what you are doing. You don't share data. Even if you want to do anything that is, you have to reach out to all the participants and tell them that I want to share this data with another research team and they must approve it. So informed consent is really, really very important, and you don't share data. You don't share data from a particular study, you are sharing with another person. No, you don't do that. You collected that data for the sole purpose of what? Of conducting that study among that group. Not that you want to share your data with another team. If you want to do that, you have to inform the participants. Unethical, as you have violated the principle of consent and confidentiality. Data can be used for secondary purpose, which was not first considered, as long as informed consent for sharing has been given, identities anonymized, and due consideration to assess illustration. Because you have to get the consent of the participant and you have to make sure that you make it bland, in the sense that no one will know that this is Adebisi that feel this. You must uphold the principle of confidentiality. When you are consulting your Google form or questionnaire, you don't ask for names. You don't need names. For what? You don't need names. You don't need anything. What you need is just basic data that you need to get from them, in such a way that nobody can trace their what they feel to them. So that's principle of confidentiality, principle of being of justice, and you have to understand that consent is really very important in research. Why should there be a research ethics? Now that I'm done with all the cases, one thing is that to protect the participants, which is very important. You don't want to cut someone's liver unknowingly, or the fact that they don't know that you're cutting their liver, or you want to cut the part of their brain for your study, and you don't tell them. So you don't do that. It's to protect the participants, the patients, society, resources, and even you as a researcher. Because if you submitted your paper or your work to ethics committee, they can defend you in case anything goes wrong. They will say that, okay, you've collected ethical approval and you have been certified to actually conduct this study. So it protects you as a researcher as people in the society, patient, and participant. So it's for protection. To ensure accuracy of scientific knowledge, they will review your proposal. If you submit your paper to ethics committee, they will review it for that for scientific validity. Is this scientifically sound? Are you not going to post any harm? Are you using the right sample size? What you are claiming is not going to cause any harm to anybody. So it's also to ensure accuracy of scientific knowledge. It says that as your participant, are they enough for you to answer that research question that you have, and to protect intellectual and property rights. If you are ethical approval for your work, it's for you alone, and you can sue anyone that is essentially trying to do that kind of study, because you already have an ethical approval for your work, and you have that right to carry out that study. So to prevent participants, I've already explained all this. To prevent exploitation, you don't exploit people, you don't discriminate, and also one thing that is important: your research must add value. You don't just want to do research for doing research sake. It's one of the ethics of research that you have to do a research that is valuable, that is going to impact the society, not just something that is just for you. And you yourself as a researcher, you don't see any value in your work. So it's very important that you understand this. For example, use of stem cells to improve quality of life. We know that stem cell, you need to get it for someone for research purposes. And we know that we need to develop treat drugs and for this kind of disease, then it is important that we do that kind of study. For instance, there is a drug for this particular disease and it's very effective. Then why are you doing the study again? So it's of less social value and doesn't have any value. Why doing it again? They can reject ethical approval because of that. So to ensure accuracy of scientific knowledge, I said that earlier, your method has to be rigorous and scientifically sound. Are you using the right exclusion criteria and exclusion criteria? Are you using the right number of people? Are you using this good research design? Ethics committee will review your work and say, okay, this is okay, change this, edit this, improve on this. So it's very important that you know all this. So do not gloss research method. Don't lie. Research method when you are submitting to ethics board. Don't falsify data. Report errors. If there's any error you're finding, report it. Beware of conflicts of interest. Should not withhold or gathering up information. Keep data and material up to 5 years. Yes, you conduct an online survey. Keep that questionnaire for up to 5 years. That data, that responses, because anything can happen. Keep it with you for at least 5 years. Data and material should be available to others. Yes, in case for some studies, you need to disclose that, okay, the data is actually available for anyone that wants to see it. It's part of research ethics that, as a researcher, we need to know. Do not present or publish paper from incomplete research or from anticipated outcome. When the research is not complete, you've not done the study, you don't have any findings yet. Because you want to present in a conference, then you are doing all sorts of things. No, you don't do that. Should not duplicate publication and submission. Yes, don't submit to 2 journals. Avoid piecemeal publication. It says that your work is not robust enough for publication, but then you want to publish it. If you do that, you are violating research ethics. Should be viewed independently by unaffiliated individuals. Yes, your research, that's how you have peer review. And it's very important that we understand this as a young researcher. Another thing that's been following research ethics also means that you want to protect your intellectual and property rights. So that no one can actually copy your work and copy it for life. And copy if that's you giving your consent or approval. So remember, piracy and plagiarism is a criminal offense when it comes to research. You don't copy people's work without giving them due acknowledgement. You don't do that. As a young researcher, you have to know that. Even if you are citing them, you also have to paraphrase. Don't just copy someone's work and say it's your own work. You have to paraphrase and you have to avoid piracy and plagiarism when it comes to research work. So, as a researcher, always make sure that when you are doing a study, especially research that this research is of high risk, it's important that you get ethics approval. You don't just want to bring it to privacy. You have to get ethics approval. How will you go about it? One thing that you have to do is that you have to write a proposal and identify a research an IRB, Investigation Research Board, that will review your proposal and give you informed consent. You can actually get it from Ministry of Health in your state. You can get this from teaching hospitals. But you have to write a short proposal on what your research is all about, the aim of your research, the methodology, and the impact that your research, the likely impact that it's going to make. So research, when you are doing high quality or when you are doing a research that you know is going to pose enormous harm to people, please get research, get ethics. For instance, you want to conduct a study that you have to give people, you want to give people paracetamol, or you want to give people a particular drug, then it's important that you get research approval from the IRB committee. You are giving someone's drug. What if something happened to them? Then the IRB can cover you, such that okay, this person is actually using the actual paracetamol, is using this, is using that. But then if you don't have any ethics board that is supporting you or that gives you the approval to go on with the study, then it's trouble. That is looking for trouble. So when you are doing research, it's very important that you actually get ethics approval. They've reviewed your work and they've seen that this work is not posing any harm to anybody. And even if you are doing a study that is, for example, clinical trial, you still need to get approval. So it's very important that you as a young trader know this. But at times for knowledge, attitude, perception, and all this kind of study, at times it's possible for the ethics approval to be waived, especially for some countries. But then, if you can get it, please do so. Get ethics approval. Nothing is too small. Because you have to follow the laid down principle when it comes to research. But at times, you might think that knowledge, attitude, perception is not posing any risk to anybody. Then it's fine. You are correct. But then at times, if you have the opportunity, get it, ethics approval. But any study that you are doing, that you know this study actually is sophisticated enough that you need ethics approval, please do get ethics approval. You can't be giving someone paracetamol in your own study and you don't have ethics approval to support you. Or you're giving someone a particular new drug that is synthesized, that's ethics approval. Please don't do that. As a young researcher, it's important that we know this. I talk about fraud in research, piracy, some people have to 2 different journals and all. Another thing that is what a scientific misconduct is that you submitting a paper to a journal and you didn't inform the co-authors. You didn't tell them that you are submitting a paper to a journal. What you should do before you submit that paper to any journal, all the authors on that paper have to check the papers and be sure that they consent to you submitting the paper as the corresponding author. You don't just do things anyhow, just submit the paper to the journal and without the approval of the authors, of the co-authors. It's very important that you get ethics approval when you are doing this, including a colleague as an author on a paper in return for a paper, even though the colleague didn't make any serious contribution. You are violating research ethics. Please know this. Like I said earlier, I've said all this before, trying to falsify data, trying to remove a client from your work. You should not do all this. These are all the things. I will just share my slide with you. I think it's something that you can read and understand. So this decisional review board, they are there to convey to maintain ethical standards of practice in research, ensure protection of subject research workers from harm or exploitation, to provide reassurance to the public, to protect researchers from unjustified criticism. Please know this, that ethics approval is also for your own good. It's not just for the good of the community or as a researcher, it's not for your own good. That even if anything goes wrong, you have a board or a team of researchers to support you and to protect you against any criticism. So now let's look at this case. A group of undergraduate students planned a research on family planning practice of Sri Lanka females. As they were close to the deadline for presenting the results, they started collecting information from participants before formal approval from the ethics review committee. This is wrong. Ethics approval is so important when you are doing research. If you're sensitive research like family planning, trying to intrude into people's privacy, then it's important that you get ethics approval when you're doing this kind of study. In case when you're doing the research and someone collapses, you need to have a legal backing. And that's what IRB is there for you. So you have to get ethics approval. And what you have to do is just to submit short proposal of what you are trying to do to ethics board, maybe Ministry of Health, or maybe the teaching hospital, and they will give you the ethics approval. So it's important that we understand as a researcher, and ethics approval just goes beyond you just collecting ethics approval. Make sure that your research process is ethical. You don't just do things anyhow. You don't just put people on the paper. You don't just collect data anyhow. You don't just share data with anybody. So it's very important that we actually understand this. So the field ethical clearance form and attached proposal, yeah, that's submit the questionnaire that you are using has to be submitted to the ethics board, informed consent, and other information. But then at times, what you have to do is that you have to reach out to the office or maybe the department that will give you ethics approval to know the format. The format actually varies. That's why I don't put a particular format in my presentation. So the format varies, and it's important that you reach out to them to know the style and what they want from you. At times it's not without the price, without the cost. Maybe you have to pay maybe 5,000 or maybe 1,000. It depends on the institution that you visit for the ethics approval. So another thing is when it comes to research, remember you have to uphold ethics in research. Don't submit one paper to two different journals. Don't just put people on paper even if they don't do anything. Make sure that you do anything, because you know that research, if you publish your work, people can still give feedback on your work and your paper can be retracted. Publishing a paper online is not the final thing. Don't just say that once you publish your paper, that's the end. Your paper can be retracted if you don't follow ethics process. There's some people that their paper has been retracted because they submitted their paper to two different journals and the two journals end up publishing it. You are violating research ethics if you do that. So as a young researchers, you have to know, that you have to follow the principle of research ethics and uphold the highest standard when you are conducting your study. So I think I will take questions now. Thank you very much for following. So let's take questions now. We have a lot of questions. You're welcome.
I really enjoyed it. And also the case scenarios you gave, like, I really enjoyed it. So if you have any question, you can ask, like any question. Even if it has to do with this topic or any topic. And I said before, the prolific researcher, just ask.
Good evening. Good evening, sir.
Good evening.
Yeah, this is Babatunde speaking. I would like to ask a question as regards that particular slide where you said data should be kept for at least a minimum of 5 years and the data should be made available. So I think there was a point that you made there. I said the data should be made available. And prior to that, there was a particular place where you pointed out that it is very wrong to transfer collected data to another set of researchers. So the information to me, they are kind of opposing. So I don't really get that bit very well.
What I mean by, thank you for that question. What I mean by making data available is that anything can happen in the future. Okay. Maybe they are telling you that you falsify data or you do something. You must be able to produce, we must be able to provide the data. And when you want to provide data, I put the criteria there of what you have to do. You have to seek informed consent or you have to anonymize it so that if anybody sees the data, they will not know that it's Taye, it is Kende, it's Idowu, it's someone that actually filled this. They won't see their names there. Even if you want to provide the data, maybe for some reason, to another people. So what I mean by you being able to provide data is that anything can go wrong. They can tell you that you falsify data, or your data is wrong, or you've collected a or you collected something that is very bad in your research, and you need to give them the data. Then will you say, because you don't want to follow they will say that you actually did fraud in your study. So whenever anybody asks you for your research data, if the reason is genuine, maybe for legal reason, you must provide it. And if you want to provide that data to external party or to the third party, make sure that you remove all information that we point out that it is Taye, it is Kende, it is Babajide that actually filled this questionnaire, or that actually provide this information. You have to remove all that. But that's what I mean by you producing it for legal reasons. Because that's happened in the past where they asked you to produce a questionnaire, provide a questionnaire because of some things that happened. So you have to be able to provide it, and you have to keep your data for at least 5 years. It must be with you. So that's what I mean by you providing your data when the needs are right for legal reason. And if you want to provide that data for external use by another researcher, then you have to reach out to all the participants and take informed consent again. Then you can share it. But then if you want to share it for legal reason or maybe any other reason, you have to anonymize it. You have to remove the names or remove any identifier that can link your data to someone or a group of people. You have to remove all that part and you can share your data for legal reason or a reason that you know is genuine. That you can share it so that you can actually vindicate yourself in case of any legal proceedings or anything. So that's what I mean by you making it available in case there's any need for it. Most of the legal reasons. Thank you.
Okay, sir. Yeah, can I ask the second question, please?
Yes,
so,
please.
Yeah, as regards retraction, you mentioned papers can be retracted like after they have been published. Is it possible that an author whose paper was probably retracted, is it possible for such author to publish in that journal again?
Actually, like, your paper being retracted is a very bad offense, and it spoils the image of universities, it spoils the image of you as a researcher. So that means that you've conducted a gross misconduct when it comes to research. So the journal accepting your paper again is possible. Maybe in a few years' time, it's possible that they actually accept it, but then that nothing stops them. Once your research is of high quality, but then as a researcher, it's a bad thing. No researcher wants their paper to be retracted because it's a bad thing for the institution, the bad thing for the researcher. So you can still publish in that journal once the editor wants you to publish there. It's fine. But then it's a bad thing and it's not something anybody should actually pray for. So that's why as a researcher, you have to uphold highest standard of value when you're doing any research. Thank you. Yeah.
All right. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Okay. So is there any other question? Any other
Someone
question?
said at the chat box that, so does this mean that if my research is just qualitative, I don't need any ethical approval? When you are talking about qualitative interview, maybe you are doing interview or something with some qualitative research, maybe quantitative interview, doing focus group discussion, you need informed consent and you need ethical approval. Once you are using a woman subject in your study, when you are collecting the data directly from human being, then you need ethical approval. That's the general rule. Once you are working with human being, even animals at times, you need to get clearance because at times there are some rules that you don't waste animals. You don't just kill animal anyhow when you are doing your studies. So it's very important that when you are doing what you mean by qualitative research, something like maybe interview or you are collecting and you're doing focus group discussion, you still need to get ethical approval. So anything you are doing with human, I think I don't lay emphasis on this a lot when you are working with human being, you are collecting data directly from them. Now you're not working with papers. If you are doing a review, then you don't need that. You don't need ethical approval. When you're doing secondary review, when you're doing systematic review, meta-analysis, you don't need ethical approval because you are not working with that person. You are working with already published paper. You are reviewing already people that we have a peer review journal. But if the paper has not been published, you are collecting data from human being directly, then you need ethical approval by default. You need ethical approval for your study. So that's it. So what happens to the research paper after it has been retracted is it will be removed across all databases, and it will show there that this paper has been retracted, and it will tell you the reason why it has been retracted. So it's a bad thing for the researcher institution. Even they can rusticate a lecturer or a researcher from a university because of this. So as a student that want to engage in research, please maintain research to the highest standard of value. Don't just do things anyhow, because as a student, as a young researcher, if your paper gets retracted, they will definitely send message to your universities, especially if it's a top journal or a very good journal. They will send email to your to maybe your VC or someone in your institution, and will publish everywhere in the journal. And even if it's indexed in PubMed or any database, they will tell you that this paper has been retracted from this and so researcher. And it's a bad thing as any researcher to have retraction, especially when the retraction is of a bad thing, or maybe plagiarism, or you engaging in a thing that's very bad. So you have to make sure that your work is of highest quality. There's no need to rush the public. I keep telling people this. Your work will be online for at least 100 years. That we even have database, big data, we have earth science, reputation growing every day. If you publish a paper in a journal, you can be sure that paper will be available online for many years. Imagine you collected something that is very bad in your study. Imagine. That means that your paper will be read by many people in many years to come. So there's no need to rush when you are publishing. Take your time, follow the process, and make sure that you do something of value, something that follows the principle of justice, principle that is ethical when you are doing your study. If you don't collect ethical approval, but you prefer you think it's very attitude perception study, make sure that your study is of highest standard that is possible. Try as much as possible, because retraction is real and no researcher actually wants their paper to be retracted. Thank you.
Okay. I have a question. Can I ask?
Yes,
yeah, sure. You can. Okay. Good evening. Thank you for how you took time to dissect this point. But I have two questions. I had the coordinator saying we can ask questions from any part of research. It mustn't be the topic you handled.
Okay.
So I want to talk a little about methodology. So supposing I'm to use an animal specimen, animal sample now, am I supposed to also, let me assume I'm using the effect of Amaranthus hybridus on mice, say, or maybe say albino rats, that is the hematological apparatus. Like, do I need to still talk about ethical approval here when I'm using animal study, not human sample, animal study? That's number one. Then in
when
the
you're working
literature
with animals, there's no need to put it on your paper, but then you need to get, I think there's a clearance that researchers get. But if it's animal, But if it's animal, most times university used to grant, let's say, a word, how can I put it, widespread ethics approval when it comes to animal. Like let's say you're working in the Department of Pharmacology, the department will have applied for ethics approval for animal use. So they're responsible for anything that has to do with animal use in that department. Then you don't need to bother yourself when it comes to animal use. But then at times, you have to ask and understand what is required of you, whether you need to get ethics approval for the use of animal, or the institution has already received maybe ethics approval to use animals in their scientific purpose. But I know most institutions already have that power to use animals as they want in their scientific study. So you don't need to fight it. But then you have to inquire that, okay, using this animal, is there any permission that I have to take? But most times, the institution already. Yep.
Okay, that's the first one. Okay, the next one is, can you hear me? Hello?
Yes, I'm with you. Yes.
Okay, if I'm to review an article or I want to carry out a research, and then I adopt somebody's methodology in carrying the research, but I made obvious modification, say above 50%. Now, am I still going to reference the person's methodology who I edited as the source since it has been modified? Do you get the question?
If you've already made a significant addition,
modification, say more than 50%.
Then it becomes Nobel. Then you are going of the methodology. So there's no need to bother yourself. You worrying about no that. Because you already said that's how you read papers. You can read research papers for you to have insights. That's what you've done. You read the research paper to understand, to have insight regarding the kind of methodology that you can use. Then it's fine. Because it's just for insight. Then you build on that further. Then there's no need to start citing or start referencing them. But then there's some methods that you have to reference that method in your own work, especially in some life sciences research. That, okay, maybe according to a method developed by Green et al., you can put it in your methodology and cite them that you use their method in your study. That's fine. But then if you make a significant contribution or changes to the methodology, then there's no need, because you are not the owner of the method. So it's important that you know that.
Okay, that's fine. That's fine. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Okay, any other question?
Any other question before we end the meeting for tonight? Okay, I think there are no other questions at ABC.
Okay.
So
All right.
yeah, I will be sending the slides to the Telegram groups. So I will ask our facilitator this night for a slide, and I'll be sending it to the Telegram group. That's if he releases his slides. So I'm sending it to the Telegram group. And if you have any other question, and you need his contact also, you can just message me directly on Telegram, and I'll send his contact to you. Thank you so much, IDBC. I really enjoyed it. Thank you so much.
Thank you. You're welcome.
Yeah. So good night, everyone. See you next week, same time. Thank you.
Right. Bye.